Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Monster's Den. Alongside from Scotland, we're keeping him up really late tonight, but I know he doesn't mind. Mr. David Gallagher is in the house. What's going on, my friend?
Well, good evening, Pete, and good evening, Candle. Um,
Yes.
I
Candle is making a regular appearance once again, so I was just messing around with the lights to see which way it works the best. I think we wanted a little darkish because we want to see the candle, but the other option, I turned out all the lights and you couldn't see anything except for this. That doesn't make any sense.
well, I don't have a
Folks have to
cat.
see my ugly mug at least a little bit, right? So,
I've just got a lamp. Ugh. Good evening.
yeah. So we're here to talk about pretty brand new movie, right? So we want to kind of keep on top of some of these major releases. This is the Guillermo del Toro interpretation or adaptation, however you want to call it, of Frankenstein, right here in 2025. And again, very, I think, true to the Mary Shelley book. More of like a gothic drama than horror, although there are some horror elements here and there. I mean, I think you could probably say that about a lot of the Frankenstein adaptations, right, Davey? Maybe the most horror themed one was the Universal film from 1931. I mean, perhaps. I don't know. There's been a lot of different takes on this story. And I, for one, was really looking forward to this because we've heard from Del Toro many times how the Frankenstein story is so important to him, and the Universal film, the James Whale film, is one of his favorites of all time. So I thought that this would be probably really good and right in his wheelhouse. And I will say he did not disappoint for me.
Yeah, he's talked about trying to get this film made since the 90s.
Yeah.
It's a long-term project for him, and he's struggled with, as always, funding and commissioning and whatnot. He was trying to get it off the ground with Doug Jones at one point. The
Yep.
studio wanted bigger names, so he was getting Benedict Cumberbatch, who I saw play Frankenstein on stage in a Danny Boyle production, where one night Cumberbatch would play the monster and Johnny Lee Miller would play Frankenstein, and the next night they would switch.
Wow, how cool is that?
Yeah, so that was 10 years ago, something like that, if it maybe a bit longer. So it's been trying to get this made, but the studio kept insisting on a star, Andrew Garfield at one point,
Yeah.
and kind of oddly, now they've got it made in an era where you don't really need a star to get films made because nothing's a hit anymore, everything flops.
True, right? It doesn't
Um,
really matter, right? You don't
yeah.
need that big mega star anymore to it's not important anymore. It really isn't.
Yeah, the project itself is. So, Jacob Elordi gets to play the monster, or the creature, which would never have happened, just 10 years ago, but it had to be in a name. As it was when we had to have names for other Frankenstein versions, even recently, like Victor Frankenstein, which was only 10 years ago with James McAvoy and Daniel Radcliffe. And we had I Frankenstein with
Yep.
Aaron Eckhart. And we had a really good one just called Frankenstein, directed by Bernard Rose of Candyman fame with Carrie Ann Moss, which was a modern day thing set from the monster's point of view, which was really brilliant, really underrated. But this is one we've all been waiting for. It's Guillermo del Toro, who we've ranked the films of. So we can maybe say roughly where we think this fits in his filmography as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And a good cast, I think, here too. Again, no real superstars, but some very notable people. So we got Oscar Isaac here, of course, which I trying to think the most recent thing he's done. Is that Moon Knight? Is that the most recent project he's been attached to? Or has he done
Prob
something since then?
Yeah, he'll have done loads since then, but that's probably the most recent genre thing for our
Yeah.
purposes, I guess. But
Yeah.
you know,
Jacob Elordi, like you mentioned, who was kind of brought in a little late in the project because he took over from Andrew Garfield, and I think this
mm,
was a better choice. Again, going in, I wasn't sure, but really good choice. We got Mia Goth, who's here, who we've talked about a lot on the channel, on some various movies that she's been in. Um, Not a big role. I feel she's maybe a little kind of wasted in this film, or underused, I should say. But she's
yeah,
fine. She's really good.
but
Christoph Waltz is here, who's always, a scene stealer, and there's various other people here as well who you probably have seen in various other Del Toro projects. along the way. It's like yeah, I always see these faces. I'm like, oh, he was in the old guy from The Strain. Oh, he was in this and he was in that. So, but really, a 2.5 hour long film. It is currently streaming on Netflix. For those of you who have Netflix, it had a brief run in the theaters in certain places. I don't remember seeing it anywhere here locally, but I know you got to see it in the
Yeah.
pictures first, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. About 15, 20 years ago, I went to, which makes me sound a little bit more hoity-toity than I am. I went to the opera, and I was taken to the opera, and I'm someone who I don't really get opera. I don't listen to opera. It doesn't, I like some of the melodies and I appreciate the singing, but live and in person and hitting you like a force of nature, I found it very powerful, and very moving. And I kind of find that with this, where everything that I really loved about this production on the big screen, watching it again on even quite a big screen on my TV, wasn't quite the same.
Not the same?
Um,
Okay. Mm.
it kind of, loses something, and that's part of the streaming age, isn't it? Where things are, all on Netflix paid for it, so they're getting just a week after cinema release or whatever it is these days. So I think this was about 3 weeks in this case.
Yeah.
But yeah, it lost a little bit of the power where the things that I really appreciated were things like the costume design, which is intentionally sumptuous, as it always is in a Del Toro production. Um, at the very start, we see Victor Frankenstein's mother coming down the stairs with this long red outfit, which flows, 30 feet behind her, and everything else is completely white. It very much evokes his earlier Crimson Peak film,
Yes,
where
I've
there,
heard that. Yeah.
where there was a lot of white and then blood to make the red and white. So it very much reminded me of that. And then another thing, of course, is the score, which was wonderful to hear on the big screen. It's a great score. I don't know if you've got in front of you the Wikipedia or anything to see who did the score. I should have noted it down myself, but it was sumptuous and brilliant, and it reminded me quite a bit of which the film did in places. Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's
Alexandre
Dracula.
Desplat. Alexandre
Yeah.
Desplat, yeah.
So it reminded me of Coppola's Dracula in terms of that score, and how that accentuated that film. And those aspects just aren't the same on home media. So
Yeah, it still for me was pretty impactful, and apparently Desplat worked with him on Shape of Water and Pinocchio. So, and I
mm,
remember both those scores. I mean, generally speaking, the scores on most of his films are very, very well
mhm.
done. Um, yeah, I also really appreciated the a lot of the outdoor scenes were very well done. There's this kind of bleakness to the whole film. Of course, it starts off kind of like the book does, and like the Branagh film also does as well, where you have the chase that's happening, right? They kind of it doesn't go in perfect chronological order based on all the events. It kind of starts near the end, then you get all the backstory, then it takes you back to the present again, then you get more backstory, then you get the creature's interpretation and his story and Frankenstein, the creator's story. But that's the way it should be, right? I think most people always will remember the flow of the whale film, which is really does not follow the book all that closely. So this is much more in line with Shelley's novel, I think. And again, it's more of like a gothic drama as opposed to a pure horror. Um, one of the most remarkable things for me in this film, and I think again, it's very true to the book, the sympathy created for the creature is off the charts in this film. Like you really identify with him, you really feel sorry for him, you feel pity for him. You're almost not horrified by him because whatever horrific things he does, he was kind of driven to do so. It's not the whole thing, this whole idea of we're going to put a criminal mind in the mindless creature and he's going to go berserk. It's not that at all. He's very human here. And I think there's some truly poignant, yeah, exactly, yes, which Del Toro has said that one of the true inspirations for him to, as far as how he was going to have the creature be, came from Curse of Frankenstein.
Yeah, and as you say, it's very different from this. version in terms of, it's not, oh, well, it's an abnormal brain.
Yeah.
So the creature's all of a sudden evil or, blah, blah, blah. And this, it does go back to Shelley and the creature. Not entirely. The film deviates quite a lot from Shelley in places, but the book is very, it's a bit like Bram Stoker's Dracula. To do a faithful version would be very weird because the book goes all over the place. I mean, Victor going to Ireland and getting arrested and being banged up for a while and stuff. It would be very strange. So I think he did what I've always praised Jimmy Sangster for doing, which is filleting the best bits and the
Kind of
bits that
have
you,
to. Yeah, you kind of have.
yeah, and finding the bits that suit your idea. So he clearly lapsed onto the themes of fatherhood and creation and the idea of what happens to the creature when its maker turns its back on him. And the sins of the father. These are the kinds of themes that roll through the film. So we see young Victor being mistreated and ignored by Charles Dance, his father. And then we see the creature being mistreated and ignored and struck in the same way, with a kind of stick to the face, as Victor was by Charles Dance, his father. So he's clearly driving home, the son becomes the father theme, the sins of the father. But then we're given the creature as a bit of an empty vessel, who's learning everything for the first time. And that's been done before, of course. I mean, that's much more in line with Shelley than say Karloff or Lee. But it's definitely the most human version we've had in a mainstream film. Easily sends De Niro in the Branagh version. Probably even more so here because it's literally human. He's baby-like at the very start,
Yep.
and then toddler-like, and then um, he witnesses the blind man in the family and whatnot. And I like the reinterpretation of that whole, scenario.
Love that.
It kind of subverts that, where we know how the blind man's story goes in other versions, but here it subverts it to make it something that the creature observes and it's more empathetic and it's a learning experience for the creature and it's how he learns about true family and what he's been missing from his own father,
Yep.
which is something he feels but can't articulate until he sees what actual fatherhood is like from the blind man.
Yep.
David Bradley, who plays the blind man, in
Yep.
a small but brilliant performance, I'd say. He's very, very good, David
Yeah,
Bradley.
he's very good. I loved him in The Strain. I thought he was fantastic, and that it was good to see him in here, I think, even
Yeah.
though it was a brief role. Yeah, I think for me, one of my favorite like extended sequences in the film, it's somewhat early on after he comes to life, is when, Victor chains him up in the basement, right? And he's got like the running water near him, and he can't obviously go too far, and you can kind of you feel for him like a caged animal, right? Who really wants to be free and experience life, and they have like this, this chain that only lets them go like 5 or 10 feet or whatever. And then when Elizabeth sees him for the first time, how she is instantly drawn to him, and there's that connection, and they play upon that connection throughout the film. uh, and then, like obviously, I don't know if we probably shouldn't give too much away, but there is a scene where something happens to her, and that kind of snaps him a little bit. But I think that's so well done. And you mentioned this whole part of like, his father, his creator, abandoning him and what he tries to do. And, it's such a great, like, kind of like half-hour sequence in the middle of this film that I really, really loved a lot. You mentioned the scenes with the blind man and the family at the house. Probably one of the only things about this film that I really didn't like. I thought the wolves looked really terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
there
not
was
good at all. Yeah.
and a couple of places. Yeah, I think the eye was off the ball in terms of the CGI. I mean, but other times, in terms of the production of
Yeah, otherwise
the
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, like, I love the production values in terms of imagining the tower where Frankenstein is not in a castle per se, But it's a very Del Toro large tower. It's almost Stephen King's Dark Tower,
Yes,
and
yeah.
it's stuck on the end of a cliff again, very Crimson Peak, in the middle of nowhere. It's a very unusual looking place, and he's got very gothic things inside it, with lots of um, kind of callbacks to various bits of artwork from throughout history, which he's clearly enjoying doing, including Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein, which was big. His adaptation, which used the original Shelley text, and that's still a big seller to this day. And Bernie Wrightson's artwork seems to be all over this, I think.
In addition to a little Mike Plug artwork too from the Marvel
Yeah,
Frankenstein, I caught a lot of that there as well. I think he did
yeah.
a great job of drawing upon the kind of the comic book medium for some of this as well.
Yeah, I think he appreciates the visual aspects of Frankenstein that have come before, but it's definitely not a case of, well, he's just paying tribute to other versions. He has got his own themes that he clearly goes for on top, and there's a lot of Del Toro isms to it.
Yeah.
His love of devices, where we see how everything's built, we see all the mechanisms and clockwork and whatnot, and I think that's one of the reasons he moves the time period on from the late 18th into the 19th century, so he can have more electricity and he can have more development and he can have more gadgets and gizmos and whatnot because he likes that. He doesn't want it to be too primitive. He's never going to be doing a caveman movie anytime. But the idea of that you mentioned already of a slight letdown in the film, for me, the major letdown in the film is Elizabeth, because Mia Goth is, I think, the star of this film. She radiates it and she brings, no, I'd say Jacob Elordi's character is the star of the film, the actual character of the creature, but Elizabeth is the I don't know the sparkling aspect that just brings it to life. And as you say, she's not in it as often as possible. To use a tortured metaphor, if she's like the lightning that brings Frankenstein's monster to life almost. She brings this film to life in that regard, where her scenes with the creature bring a real, not just humanity, because that's easy to do to have,
It's just
you know,
empathy, right? It's just
yeah,
exuding that. Yeah, and I wanted more of that.
to have a creature meeting the creator, that's easy enough to do and whatnot, but to do what Mia Goth does and project that empathy and have it coming off the screen. I mean, she's just one of the best actresses I've ever seen, I think. In her short career already, she's already I can't remember slightly never being impressed. I mean, she's always the best thing in her films.
Yes, that is
Um,
true. Yep.
Always, it's ridiculous how consistently she steals the movies. And here, Elizabeth gives the creature that little bit more in terms of it's one thing to be human, it's another thing to kind of live. And she gives that creature something to live for and something to think about. It's not a sexual thing, and it's not a mother thing. Although I did think it's very interesting that she also plays Victor's mother very briefly at the start of the film,
Yep.
which I thought that's an interesting choice. Like, they're going to develop that into her becoming a mother for the creature and kind of parallels, and they don't do that at all.
Yeah.
So it's interesting why she was cast in that role. Maybe it's a tribute to Elsa Lanchester being cast as both Mary Shelley and the bride
That
in
could
kind
be. I
of
didn't even think of that. Yep. I didn't even think of that.
because that again doesn't have a thematic reason, it just is. So in this case, it seems to happen again where it's just two separate roles.
Yeah.
So I did think that she was going to be more of a mother creature, for the creature. Doesn't happen. Elizabeth is underused, but again, she still brings enough. She's there, I'd say just enough, where if the film had any less of her, it would be a bit of a problem, to be honest. But she's definitely there just enough. I mean, that scene where she's in the church, which is funny because I know it well because it's filmed in Glasgow. That scene where she's in the Glasgow Cathedral, just at the necropolis. and she wanders through it. It looks great on screen, big gothic looking architecture and whatnot. And she goes into the confessional booth, and Victor plays the priest. He's pretending to be the priest to try and hear her confession, and at that stage he's still relatively human enough, Victor, to maybe fancy her and maybe think that there's something that could happen between him and his own brother's fiance. But she's onto him straight away and kind of plays a funny little flirty game with him. But they don't elaborate on that much more than that. We don't really go back to that, and they're kind of back and forth sexual chemistry. It doesn't really get developed. It
Yeah.
almost makes me feel like it was maybe that was in another draft or something. That was more something that was going to come back later on in the film and doesn't at all.
Yeah, it kind of surprised me because we're so used to seeing, Victor with a love interest in all these
Mm.
films and really didn't happen here. And maybe the whole idea is that he was just too far gone to even have the love in his life,
Mm.
right? Which is possible. And I'm very happy because I kind of thought they were going to go there and do the full-on bride thing, and they hinted at it, but they didn't.
Yeah,
Glad they didn't.
yeah. That would have been too close to Branagh, to
Yeah.
be honest. I think the film is a bit conscious that Kenneth Branagh's film also tried to do this. Well, I'm being faithful to the Shelley version, relatively recently in cinema history, although it is 30 odd years ago, but it doesn't feel that long ago, does it? It's not an ancient relic. So it kind of feels like it's saying, "Oh, don't want to be too Branagh-like in this." And the Branagh film had a lot of positives. I really enjoyed that film, but it was very over the top in a lot of places. And Guillermo del Toro's films are often very over the top as well. But this film was more subdued. It wasn't as operatic as the Kenneth Branagh version was, apart from things like the set design, and the costumes, which were elaborate and over the top. But it never lost sight, as much as I say things like Elizabeth wasn't developed enough, it never loses sight of the relationship between Creature and Victor. It's very tight in that regard,
Yes.
where, I mean, literally we get title cards to say Victor's story and then the Creature's story. And she mentioned that it does start in the trip to the North Pole and whatnot, the stranded sailors, just like the Shelley version and the story being told by Victor. So again, just like the Shelley version, uh, in some remarkable scenes. One thing that was a bit, I'm not terribly sure about this, is the creatures are quite invincible in this version,
I
and
was just going to say the
he
superhuman strength is a little odd here.
he Wolverines. He doesn't. So he's not just hard to kill. He will get a body part blown up, but it just regenerates.
Yeah.
So it talks about I've got a hole in me, and then it just grows back. Very strange. I didn't quite need that, to be honest. I'm not too sure what it
He
adds.
also got the shot to the head, kind of like an ode to the Hammer film, and then he's fine, right? It's like it's very yeah. He's pushing
Yeah,
ships and he's doing all sorts of superhuman stuff here, which is like, all right, that's a kind of a new twist on this. I mean, he's supposed
yeah.
to be strong, but this like kind of takes it to like the next level.
I mean, I could maybe excuse part of it as being, well, it's Victor's version, so that's just how he saw it, or that's how he's
True. Yeah, I
telling
didn't
it.
think of that. Yeah, that's true.
But then he does it outside the versions. He does it with the Norwegians as well.
Yeah.
So is that also somebody's story? Maybe it's the Norway. Maybe this whole film is the Norwegian captain's version, and he's telling it years later.
Yeah.
It's Lars Mikkelsen's version, and who knows. But yeah, there was a few odd choices with regards to the creature's kind of powers, if you will. But nothing terminal. It doesn't kill the
No.
thing for me. And I thought Jacob Elordi was brilliant as the creature. I wasn't in love with Oscar Isaac's version of Victor.
I was just
Uh,
going to ask you that. Yeah. I liked him here because I like him as an actor,
mhm.
but he's out of all the main characters, he's the one that I thought about the least when the movie was over. He wasn't as impactful as some of the other characters in the film.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have much of a character arc apart from the very vague and very obvious, father-son thing. But I don't think he projects much more than that. And his accent was slipping all over the place. Like,
Yeah.
is he very posh? Is he sl slightly American for some reason at spots? And yeah, the decisions, they're supposed to be European. Why is everybody talking with an English accent?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's a gothic, I suppose. I mean, is that a tribute to the Hammer films as well? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, Oscar Isaac usually has a lot of personality, and he's fine. But I just think when he's
Oh.
opposite Mia Goth and when he's opposite Jacob Elordi, they're blowing him out the water
Oh,
somewhat.
totally. Yeah. He doesn't command the screen like Colin Clive, and certainly not like Peter Cushing. If we're just
Mm.
maybe, if you want to compare him to Kenneth Branagh, that's all, he's fine, but when I got done watching this film, he's the one guy who you want to be thinking about and talking about, and he wasn't. It's like he literally gets upstaged in almost every scene by everybody else. Again, fine performance, not one of his best, but he's not the reason to watch this film at all.
No, and he's in the unfortunate position of just about everything he does, he's opposite a great actor. I mean, apart from those scenes, his other scenes are with, Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
And Christoph Waltz is an actor that, you know, let's be honest, he kind of just plays Christoph Waltz every time.
Yeah, that's
Where
fine. Well, we love him for it, right?
yeah, he does the I'm the polite gentleman, but there's something dark going to come out about me eventually, which he's been doing since Inglourious Bastards. But he does it here again. He's very polite and amiable. And oh, my daughter is, well, my niece is engaged, and I'm going to be funding all your weird projects from now on. How do you feel about this? And oh, he seemed very nice. And wouldn't you know who won the pony? He's got a dark secret to reveal, and there's a reason for him funding Victor's projects and blah blah blah. So yeah, that was also a bit of a tribute to the Hammer films, maybe where the professor becomes involved, and Peter Cushing, look out, professor, pushing the professor off the stairs. So Christoph Waltz's character here is maybe that character. It's very similar. But yeah, it's interesting. I think he's got an interesting little character quirk about him too. But yeah, I think the main thrust of the film is the through line from Charles Dance to Victor to the creature. And it needs to nail that, and it does. So, although we've got quibbles with a lot of the film, which are quite major quibbles at times, the main thing it needs to get right, it never gets wrong, which is good.
Yeah.
But it keeps that through line going.
Yeah. What'd you think about the creature makeup and design and things like that? I thought it was pretty well done. It was different, which, I think it needed to be. There's no flat top and electrodes. There's no
Yeah,
disgusting like Christopher Lee and or Robert De Niro, right? This, I think, obviously they've got a young actor because what is he like 28 or something like that, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's young. He's one of the favorites to be the next Bond.
Yeah.
Um, I like the makeup. It's never going to be iconic, but it's intentionally not designed that way. We have to imagine that this character could see himself fitting into the real world. So, if he has the flat top and the bolts, that's not going to be realistic. But this character could, pass for,
He's got scars all over the place,
yeah.
but he looks
So,
other than that, he looks normal for the most part.
yeah, so wearing the cloak and things, it can just move around normally. It looks a little bit the way they've sized him up to be so tall and whatnot. He looks a little bit like one of the engineers from Prometheus, the white dude.
Yes, yes, maybe not as bulky, but yes, for sure.
Yeah, when he's walking around shirtless and CGI'd up quite often, he looks very like one of them. Um, I love the scenes of him just learning. I think he plays that fantastically, and you get to see a lot of his facial acting there, and that's good because the makeup doesn't stop him from being able to emote
Right.
which again is something that could happen with a heavy makeup job. So they've clearly consciously thought we better make sure we've got enough for him to be able to pass human emotions through and childlike emotions in the scenes where he's, what's water, what's fire, what's smiling, what's being chained up. What does that mean? What does not being able to follow my father because he doesn't want me to mean? What does the building blowing up mean and having to escape in a water slide that's very handily just sitting right next to him to escape the exploding building. What does that all mean? So we're learning with him, and he projects that very well through the makeup and the design that Jacob Elordi has. He projects that very well. So I think in this case the makeup will never be iconic. I don't think you'll ever see like a mask for it like this.
Right.
But at the same time, it suits the film better. This could never be in this film.
No.
Yeah. So I'm very happy with it in this.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit. And it's funny. I think you said it before. It totally feels like a Del Toro film. It's like so. Like
Mm.
if you didn't, if I went into this blind, I had no idea that he had done this film. I would be like, God, this kind of reminds me of like any of those other number of films that we mentioned, as far as like the feel of the film, because he definitely has a style. And I was left sitting there thinking, it's like, wow. Wouldn't it be cool if they gave the reins to do all the Universal horror reimaginings to Guillermo del Toro? And how exciting would it be to have him do like a mummy film or a vampire film or a werewolf film or Creature from the Black Lagoon, blah, even though he's already done some films that kind of like are in the same ballpark as
Yeah.
these. I think he's the kind of guy, he gets that whole kind of the time period and the whole gothicness of it. He really gets it. There's nothing modern looking about this, and it just like it felt like when it was supposed to be taking place, and he gets that vibe that I think these characters, these creations deserve. That's kind of what I walked away from this with.
Yeah, he knows the tone, and he knows he's clearly a massive Shelley fan, and he knows, you know, tonally what this film needs to be to feel like Mary Shelley, even though he changes a lot about it. It still feels like Mary Shelley. So he clearly understands that and appreciates that. In terms of why he wouldn't be able to do a big universe, again, this film cost a fortune.
Yeah, yeah,
So, we know what happens with Universal, where they've tried 5 times, literally, to start a dark universe. They did it with the Wolfman, with Benicio del Toro, the other Del Toro, his son.
yeah.
No, it's not true. Um, it's just bullshit. Um, they tried it with the Dracula Untold. They tried it with the Tom Cruise Mummy. They are doing it now with those really low budget films. The Wolfman, the Invisible Man, those ones in the last few years. But those are so, it's a modern
They're
reimagining,
so
and they
far
cost
removed. Yeah,
yeah, and they cost $10 million, and they're small little kind of cheap projects for up and coming directors. I mean, I really liked The Invisible Man. I didn't like The Wolfman at all. But it's not as if you're going to get a House of Frankenstein version with all those characters, so it's not really the same thing in terms of a shared universe. This could be, but it's not going to happen, is it? I mean, the creature here would fit into it because of his powers, if you like. But it's just not going to happen with Universal. Is it taking the chance to really go for, and are they going to go for another 200 million Dracula and a 200 million Mummy? I mean, I think they're making, who is it that's directing a Mummy movie at the moment? There's a big one coming out. No, I'm sure I put it in the Monsters Den chat a while ago. But they're just not going to do these big risk movies because they've been burnt too many times, I think. Upcoming Mummy movie. Let me just quickly check. It's The Mummy 2026. Uh, oh, it's another one of these Blumhouse ones, these cheap ones, the $10 million ones. written by and directed by Lee Cronin, who did the Evil Dead Rise and is doing the next Evil Dead movie,
Okay.
and starring Jack Rayner. It's a low budget reimagining. Yeah, so again, that's not going to be, that's going to be a very low budget thing. So that's not going to be a big sumptuous gothic production. You just can't do those kind of things cheap. You can't have the scope of Victor's castle here cheap. The costumes, they all cost a fortune. Everything about it. If you want quality, pay for it. And people aren't going to the cinema. I mean, as you mentioned, this had a very limited release, and then it just is expected to make its something back for Netflix in terms of subscribers and the amount of retention that it gets, and how much is this driving data. And we never really see the outcomes of these
We know
things.
we have no way of knowing. So, does this lose, tens of millions of dollars,
Mm.
right? We have no
And
way of really knowing. Do they recoup their money back at all when these things go to the streaming services?
yeah,
I have no idea.
yeah, we never find out how well these things. I mean, you can only go by are people talking about these things, and and Stranger Things, as I put in the chat yesterday, is becoming more expensive than any film ever made for its upcoming
The
last
show, right?
series.
Yeah.
Which, so clearly they know, okay, Stranger Things drives subscribers and retention and blah, blah, blah. Is Del Toro doing that? Uh, what was there was a film earlier this year, about giant robots. I can't remember the name of it. Something State, something like that. Electric State, I think it was called. And that was the most expensive film ever made. Um, and I've, no, I can't remember the name of it, and it's the most expensive film ever made. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. So Netflix, yeah, South Park years ago did the parody of Netflix offices. Hello, Netflix, you're being commissioned now. Every time they answer the phone, they commission somebody, Just, hello, Netflix, you've got a commission. Here's $500 million. We don't know. We just never find out until I guess something else comes out like it. We go, well, I guess that worked.
Yeah. I mean, you have to
But
wonder, is the death knell for the big budget films pretty much, is that era dead? I mean, they're still making them, like Marvel and Disney are still doing these big budget films. They're still out there, but it's getting harder and harder for them to recoup their money back again. And you have to wonder if the future of film is you make movies and you put them on these streaming services and that's it. Because, eventually people are going to stop going to the theaters. And it's just,
yeah, I've said it for a long time that the cinema was on its knees anyway, and then the pandemic, I think, just killed it.
yeah, yeah, big time.
Where people were like, "Oh wait, we don't even need to leave the house to get big budget things. We can," and it got people used to streaming a lot more, and it got people used to expecting big stars on streaming, and you get major stars doing streaming shows and whatnot, so you don't really feel you're missing much if you do stay at home and oh well, we'll get it in a few weeks anyway,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I think you need an appreciation, and it's very much preaching to the choir here because I'm sure a lot of the audience have this of there's nothing like sitting in that seat in the cinema and the fanfare of it used to be the 20th Century Fox theme or whatever, a big fanfare hitting up and the lights going down and think, here we go, here we go. It's still magic to me, but whole generations are coming up now that have just not got the taste for it, and it's gone. And
It is gone.
when films cost as much as they do, I mean, you mentioned Star Wars and Marvel. I mean, they've disappeared for a long time, Star Wars movies, because Solo flopped and Rise of Skywalker didn't make much money, and so they put everything into streaming, and then the streaming TV shows started to kind of, the Acolyte and things got a lot of feedback that wasn't positive, although I thought it had some decent things in it. And we had like 200 million shows, $200 million shows that nobody was watching. It felt like the Skeleton Crew was called, where it was basically the Goonies with Jude Law in Star Wars. And people didn't seem to. I mean, I was saying to people, "Did you watch that?" No, they hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah.
So Star Wars is now going back to the big screen. We're getting a new film with Ryan Gosling in Star Wars. It feels like, oh, give money to a big star again. We'll see if we can heat this thing up. So and we're getting the Mandalorian film next year.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting because one of the reasons I keep saying that Captain America: Brave New World flopped is people got used to, and we're just going into a streaming rant now, aren't we? But hey, one of the reasons that that film flopped, Captain America: Brave New World and Thunderbolts, is those characters were from projects that people were getting free on Disney Plus, even though you do have to subscribe, but realistically,
Yeah.
free on
Yeah.
Disney Plus. And then all of a sudden, you'd expect people to pay for those same characters on the big screen. And it's, well, no, I've had Falcon and the
There's
Winter
still this
Soldier.
disconnect between TV
Yeah,
characters and actors and film, right?
yeah,
Because there always has been.
yeah.
No different.
I'm not going to pay for that. I get that free. Falcon and Winter Soldier I've had free for ages, and I got the Black Widow movie. All those characters free during the pandemic. It came out and blah blah blah. So you've conditioned an audience to say, no, I don't need to go to the
I'll
cinema.
wait. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and they've made their audience think that by giving them. I mean, if you'd have said 15 years ago, Hugh McGregor's going to come back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it's not going to be in the big screens, what? Nobody would have believed that,
right.
But it happened. There was a six part Obi-Wan Kenobi show,
Yep.
which has again been pretty much forgotten. So, that's the kind of world that this film exists in, that Guillermo del Toro has to make deals with Netflix and make Pinocchio that came out and didn't get many views. And, so Netflix maybe are giving him a bit of a run because he's a big name and it's nice to have prestige directors, a bit like Apple are funding Martin Scorsese for a good few films just to kind of have a Martin Scorsese production under their belt.
Yep. Yep.
So is that the world we're operating in? No, it kind of feels like it. Bit worried for the next 10, 20 years what's going to happen with
I
cinema.
know. I know. I'm afraid to even think about it, but
Mm,
not much we can do, right? I still like to go support the theaters. I try to go as often as possible. I don't go as much as I'd like, but I go to see one or two films a month in the theater if there's something I really want to see. And if not, I mean, I do the streaming thing too, but I try not to rely on that because it's really not how some of these films are meant to be seen.
yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. So anyway,
But
Frankenstein, two thumbs up here. Um,
yeah, I mean, in terms of filmography, uh, bottom half for me, definitely. It's not top tier Del Toro. We're not talking Pan's Labyrinth here by any stretch of the imagination.
no, not quite, but it's very
But
strong.
Del Toro not quite making a masterpiece is still well worth anybody's time.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was good. So, so there you have it, everybody. Our take on the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein adaptation. If you've seen it, let us know what you think down in the comments below. We try not to give away too many final spoilers on the second half of the film. So for those who haven't seen it yet, so go check it out if you haven't, and then come back and let us know what you think. The comments section is always open for you to let us know your opinions on this film. So, and we'll see you back here 1 week from tonight for the full cast episode of The Monsters Den because we're going to be talking aliens attack films, right? Is that what we're calling it? When aliens attack, right?
yeah, when aliens, I
Yeah,
don't know how the West was won.
yeah, exactly. So we're each going to come with some two favorite films that we love that have aliens coming to get us, right? So that's coming up next week on the Monsters Den. Until then, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram
All the
all the
damn
damn
time.
time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit that like button before you leave. For Davy Gallagher, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy the rest of your night. Check us out next week on the Monsters Den. Till then, have a good weekend, everybody. Bye bye.